The third horizon will not be reached by people who never feel fear. It will be reached by human beings who learn from fear, prepare for danger, develop competence, and build enough trust to face the unknown together. Prepared, not fearless. That is the lesson.
You are not here by accident. We are standing at the edge of possibilities between what is, what could, and what will be. Where time, space, and humanity cross paths. Where the future has stopped being theory as old assumptions fade away and new realities are becoming real. Are you ready to step beyond the familiar? Look no further and enter the third horizon.
Before we begin, in the previous episode, we examined truth distortion. We explored what happens when fear, pride, assumption, or repetition begins to interfere with our shared relationship with reality. And through reality lensing, we introduced a practical method for slowing that distortion, which was pause, separate, test, and correct. But while working through that episode, another question began to emerge. What happens when fear is not merely influencing what we believe? What happens when fear begins influencing how we act, how we prepare, and how we treat one another? That question deserves an episode of its own. So, before we move forward to short-term dominance, I want to pause our regular sequence for a special episode. An episode about fear. But perhaps more importantly, an episode about readiness. Prepared, not fearless. How competence builds human cohesion. There is a common belief that courage means feeling no fear. We imagine the courageous person as someone untouched by uncertainty. Someone who walks into danger without anxiety, hesitation, or doubt. But that may not be the most useful understanding of courage. And it may not be the most honest understanding of fear. Recently, I listened to a podcast interview with Chris Hadfield. Chris Hadfield is a retired colonel, a test pilot, an astronaut, and the former commander of the International Space Station. As I listened, I was struck not merely by his expertise, which was amazing, to say the least, but by the common sense wisdom with which he explained what he talked about. He made an important distinction. Whereas fear and danger are not the same thing. Danger belongs to the situation. Fear belongs to the human response. A bicycle can be dangerous before a child learns how to ride it. The bicycle, therefore, remains dangerous after the child becomes an experienced adult. The possibility of falling never completely disappears. what changes is the person. Balance develops, judgment improves, awareness expands, competence grows. The danger may remain, but the fear changes because the human being is no longer encountering the danger unprepared. Chris Hadfield expressed this in one clear sentence, where he said, "The greatest antidote for fear is competence." That sentence deserves our attention because it does not tell us to ignore fear. It does not tell us to hide fear. It does not tell us to pretend that danger is not real. It tells us to learn, to prepare, to practice, to become more capable of meeting the danger with judgment instead of panic. Fear is not always an enemy. Sometimes fear is information. It may be telling us that something matters, that something is uncertain, that we do not yet understand what we are facing, or that we do not yet possess the ability required to respond well. The problem is not that fear speaks. The problem begins when fear becomes the only voice we hear. Fear can narrow attention. It can make every uncertainty feel like an immediate threat. It can make people withdraw from one another. It can make us conceal information, protect our position, assign blame, or demand control. And when that happens, fear begins activating the human fault lines. Fear can contribute to cohesion breakdown when suspicion replaces trust. It can contribute to truth distortion when frightening information is accepted without examination. It can contribute to short-term dominance when immediate relief becomes more important than long-term wisdom. It can contribute to empathy, suppression, when another human being is perceived only as a threat. It can contribute to power misalignment, when control becomes more important than purpose. And it can contribute to meaning collapse, when uncertainty becomes hopelessness. Fear is not itself one of the 6 fault lines. It is something different. Fear is a human force that can place pressure upon all 6. There is another force that can increase the reach of fear. It is an emerging third horizon idea that I call the amplification vector. The amplification vector describes the way an emotion, an ideal, a claim, or a human reaction can expand beyond the person who first experienced it. Throughout most of human history, fear moved at the speed of human contact, from one person to another, from one conversation to the next. But today, technology has changed that scale. A single frightening claim can reach millions of people within seconds. An image can spread before its origin has been confirmed. A rumor can travel around the world before the person involved has an opportunity to respond. A partial truth can be repeated so often that repetition begins to resemble evidence. And an emotional reaction can influence entire populations before reflection has even ever begun. The amplification vector has three important qualities: speed, reach, and repetition. Speed determines how quickly the message moves. Reach determines how many human beings encounter it. And repetition determines how familiar and therefore believable the message begins to feel. This creates a dangerous imbalance. Fear can be amplified almost instantly. But competence requires time. Preparation requires effort. Truth requires examination. And trust requires human experience. This means fear can sometimes reach the crowd before wisdom has entered the conversation. That possibility can be exploited. A person seeking attention can magnify fear. A group seeking influence can magnify suspicion. A leader seeking control can magnify uncertainty. And anyone seeking to alter human behavior can present fear as urgency and urgency as reason to stop asking questions. When that happens, the amplification vector can accelerate truth distortion. It can repeat an incomplete story. It can remove context, reward emotional certainty, and push human beings towards judgment before understanding. It can also accelerate cohesion breakdown. Fear moves outward. Suspicion grows. People retreat into protective groups. And human beings who once saw one another as neighbors begin seeing one another as threats. But the amplification vector is not inherently destructive. The same technology that spreads panic can spread warning. The same reach that distributes a rumor can distribute correction. The same human network that amplifies division can amplify preparation, courage, knowledge, and cooperation. During an emergency, accurate information can help millions of people prepare. A skilled teacher can share knowledge far beyond the classroom. A voice of calm judgment can interrupt panic. And a truthful correction can begin repairing what distortion damaged. The amplification vector does not decide what humanity becomes. It magnifies what human beings place within it. That gives us another responsibility. Before we amplify something, we should ask, is it true? Is it complete? Is it necessary? Will it prepare people or merely frighten them? Will it strengthen human understanding? Or will it use fear to weaken judgment? Because in an age of immediate communication, we are not only responsible for what we believe, we are also responsible for what we amplify. Fear can now travel faster than before. Our challenge is to make sure that truth, competence, and human responsibility are not left behind. But pressure does not always produce fragmentation. Sometimes pressure reveals preparation. Sometimes it reveals discipline. Sometimes it reveals the depth of human trust. This is where the four vectors of human behavior become important. The stabilizing vector represents our need for safety, security, order, and predictability. Fear begins here, when security feels threatened. The generative vector represents our desire to grow, achieve, create, and pursue opportunity. Fear can weaken this vector by persuading us that risk should always be avoided. The guiding vector represents truth, wisdom, meaning, and morality and purpose. Fear can distort this vector when anxiety becomes our guide. And the bonding vector represents belonging, trust, identity, and human connection. Fear can weaken this vector when we begin treating others as dangers instead of people. But the vectors can also help us restore us. A stabilizing vector encourages preparation. The generative vector encourages learning and capability. The guiding vector helps us judge which risks are worth taking. And the bonding vector reminds us that human beings do not have to face every danger alone. When those four vectors work together, fear can become a signal for growth rather than a command to retreat. Chris Hadfield offered another powerful thought, which was, I would much rather go through life ready than afraid. Ready, not fearless. That distinction matters. To be fearless could mean that a person does not recognize the danger. To be ready means the danger has been seen, respected, studied, and prepared for. Readiness does not promise that nothing will go wrong. It does not create complete control. It gives human beings more choices when something does go wrong. Consider driving. Every time we enter a vehicle, we accept risk. Other drivers may be distracted. Weather may change. Equipment may fail. An unexpected danger may enter the road at any time. We cannot control every person, every vehicle, or every event. But we are not helpless. We can remain attentive. We can maintain the vehicle. We can understand the conditions. We can leave space between ourselves and the vehicle ahead. We can avoid distraction. We can practice defensive judgment. We cannot control everything on that road, but competence allows us to influence what happens next. That insight applies far beyond driving. Do we know what to do if a fire alarm sounds? Most of us do. Do we know what to do if someone is choking? Most of us do. Can we recognize the signs of a medical emergency? Most of us can. Have we discussed what our family should do during severe weather? Most of us have. Do the people around us understand their responsibilities when pressure appears? Fear asks, what if something goes wrong? Competence asks, what will I do if it does? And that brings us back to the three models from the earlier journey on the third horizon. The Cohesion Vector, the Cohesion Index, and the Cohesion Engine. In the previous series, we often used these models to examine the larger structures humanity creates. But human fault lines takes us deeper. The same models can help us understand the people inside the moment, their trust, their choices, their preparation, and their response to one another. First, there's the cohesion vector. The cohesion vector asks, in what direction are human relationships moving? When fear enters the room, are people moving towards suspicion, isolation, blame, concealment, and self-protection? Or are they moving towards awareness, communication, responsibility, mutual reliance, and earned trust? Pressure reveals direction. Fear may begin the movement, but fear does not have to determine where that movement ends up. Human choices determine the direction. This gives us a human cohesion vector. And at one end of this vector, fear becomes fragmented. At the other end of that vector, preparation becomes trust. The question is not only, what are we feeling? The deeper question is, where is that feeling taking us? Then comes the Cohesion Index. The Cohesion Index asks, what is the present condition of human connection? This does not have to be a complicated number. It can begin with honest questions. Do we trust one another? Can we speak honestly about the danger? Do we understand what we are facing? Does each person know what is expected of them? Are we capable enough to depend upon one another? Can we admit mistakes without immediately searching for someone to blame? And does our shared purpose remain stronger than our individual fear? Those questions reveal the condition of cohesion. A low cohesion index does not necessarily mean that people dislike one another. It may mean that trust has not been developed. Communication has not been practiced. Responsibilities remain unclear, or competence has not yet been demonstrated. A high cohesion index does not mean that everyone feels calm. It means that fear has not destroyed their ability to work together. They can communicate. They can depend upon one another. They can correct mistakes. And they can remain connected under pressure. Then comes the Cohesion Engine. The Cohesion Engine asks, what actively creates and renews human cohesion? For human fault lines, the engine has 5 movements: recognize, prepare, practice, rely, reflect. First, let's talk about recognize. See the danger honestly. Do not exaggerate it. Do not deny it. Do not disguise it to make yourself comfortable. Ask what is real. Ask what is possible. Ask what is most likely, and ask what the consequences could become. Second, we have prepare. Learn what the movement may require. Acquire the knowledge. Gather what is needed. Discuss responsibilities. And decide what actions will be available if pressure rises. Thirdly, we have practice. Understanding is not yet competence. Knowledge must become action. Skills must be rehearsed. Communication must be tested. Responsibilities must become familiar. Practice allows the human response to become more deliberate and less dependent upon panic. Fourth, we have rely. Cohesion becomes real when people can depend upon one another. Not through blind trust, not through comforting promises, but through earned trust. I know what you can do. You know what I can do. We understand our responsibilities, and neither of us has to face the danger entirely alone. And then, fifth, we have reflect. After the moment passes, we ask, what happened? What worked? What failed? What did we misunderstand? Where were we unprepared? What must we learn before the next challenge arrives? Reflection returns us to recognition. And the cohesion engine begins again. Recognize, prepare, practice, rely, and of course, reflect. This is how fear can become readiness. and how readiness can become cohesion. History gives us powerful examples. In April of 1970, the crew of Apollo 13 was traveling towards the moon when an oxygen tank ruptured. The lunar landing, or landing on the moon, was abandoned. The lives of the astronauts became the only mission that mattered. The danger was real. The uncertainty was real. And the possible consequences could not have been greater. But the crew and the people in mission control were not beginning from helplessness. They had trained. They had understood their responsibilities. They had practiced communication. They had processed deep competence across many different fields. They could not eliminate the danger, but they could make one informed decision after another. They used the lunar module as a lifeboat. They conserved limited resources. They improvised solutions using what was available. They communicated, they calculated, they corrected, and they relied upon one another. Apollo 13 did not succeed because nobody felt fear. It succeeded as a human rescue because competence, discipline, communication, and earned trust remained stronger than panic. Decades later, the world witnessed another extraordinary example. In August of 2010, a mine collapsed in Chile. 33 miners were trapped, approximately 2,300 feet beneath the Acamula Desert. For 17 days, the world did not know whether they were alive or dead. When rescuers finally reached them, the miners had survived. But bringing them home would require much more than hope. Underground, the miners organized themselves. They shared responsibilities. They maintained parts of the mine. They preserved communication. And they worked to support one another. Above ground, families, Chilean specialists, engineers, medical professionals, psychologists, and international advisors gathered around one purpose: bring them home. NASA contributed experience, from protecting human beings inside dangerous, isolated environments. Recommendations were developed for medical care, nutrition, psychological health, and the design requirements of the rescue capsule. After 69 days, all 33 miners were returned alive to the surface. Not a single person produced that outcome. Not a single act of courage was enough. It required competence across many human roles. It required information moving honestly. It required responsibilities being understood. It required people to rely upon skills that others had spent years developing. And it required a shared purpose strong enough to hold human beings together through uncertainty. Apollo 13 and the Chilean rescue show what trained people can accomplish. when competence, communication, and shared purpose come together under pressure. But human cohesion is not limited to astronauts, engineers, and medical specialists, or professional rescue teams. Sometimes ordinary human beings discover that they possess more capability than they ever realized. There is a true story from Louisville, Kentucky, that demonstrates this human potential. It became the inspiration for the film Ordinary Angels. The story centers on Sharon Stevens, a hairdresser from Louisville, who learned about the Schmidt family. Their young daughter, Michelle, had been born with a serious liver condition. She desperately needed a liver transplant. Her family was already carrying grief, medical expenses, and uncertainty, along with responsibilities that had become too difficult to carry alone. Sharon could have read the story, felt sympathy for the family, and continued on with her life. But she chose to become involved. She helped raise needy money. She contacted people throughout the community. She organized different forms of assistance. And she used the abilities and influence that she already possessed to bring other human beings into the family's struggle. Then on January the 17th, 1994, a donor liver became available. But the call arrived during a historic Kentucky snowstorm. Approximately 17 inches of snow had brought Louisville to a standstill. Roads throughout the city were blocked. The airport had been closed. Temperatures were continuing to fall. And Michelle had only limited time to reach Omaha for the transplant. The danger was very real. The weather was beyond the control of any one person, and no individual could solve the entire problem alone. But a new plan began forming. A helicopter could carry Michelle through the snow to the airport. But the helicopter first needed a safe place to land. A call for help went out through local news and communication. People were asked to bring shovels to Southeast Christian Church. At first, only a few came. Then more people began arriving. Neighbors, church members, and first responders all came forward to offer help. Workers arrived with useful equipment. Strangers who had never met Michelle or her family came because they understood that a child's life was in danger. Hundreds of people helped transform a snow-covered church parking lot into a helicopter landing area. The helicopter carried Michelle from the improvised landing area towards the waiting airport. Volunteer pilots and a donated aircraft then helped carry her the remaining distance to Omaha. And Michelle received the transplant. The people who responded could not control the snowstorm. They could not control when the donor liver became available. They could not guarantee that the transplant would succeed. But they recognized something that lies in the heart of this entire episode. Limited control does not mean complete human helplessness. Each person offered what they possessed: a shovel, a vehicle, useful equipment, a professional skill, a public voice, a safe location, an aircraft, or simply the willingness to arrive and begin helping. No single contribution was enough. But when those contributions were joined, they became a collective human capability. This is also where the amplification vector reveals its positive human direction. Earlier, we examined how technology can amplify fear, rumors, and distortion. But in Louisville, communication amplified an accurate and urgent human need. The message did not tell people who they should fear. It told them who needed help. It did not amplify suspicion. It amplified human responsibility. It did not turn human beings against other human beings. It gave separate individuals a reason to find one another. The same force that spreads panic can also spread shared purpose. The same communication that distributes distortion can also distribute truth. And the same human network that can accelerate human division can also accelerate compassion. When the message placed within it is honest, necessary, and directed towards protecting human dignity. What happened in Louisville was not merely a large expression of sympathy for a child. Sympathy alone would not have cleared the deep snow. Compassion identified the human need. Communication carried that need outward. Competence supplied different human abilities. And cohesion joined those abilities around one shared purpose: bring Michelle safely home to the future that remained possible for her. That community effort helped give Michelle nearly 3 more decades of life. She grew up. She graduated college. She married and built a life. She entered the medical field where she helped other children. The people holding those shovels could not see that future while standing there in the snow. They only knew that one child needed their help in that moment. But an entire human future was hidden inside their decision to answer that need. That is shared humanity. It is not merely feeling another human's pain. It is allowing another person's need to recognize our choices, our abilities, and our resources so that the person does not face that pain alone. Apollo 13 shows us what deeply trained human beings can accomplish through disciplined cooperation. The Chilean rescue shows us what becomes humanly possible when expertise, responsibility, and international cooperation join around one human mission. And the Louisville community shows us that human cohesion does not belong only to trained experts. Ordinary people with different abilities can become extraordinary under pressure. When compassion becomes human action, and action becomes shared purpose. All 3 examples teach us the same fundamental human lesson. Cohesion is not merely a feeling of togetherness. Human cohesion becomes real when people prepare and communicate, accept responsibility for one another, and contribute what they possess to protect another human life. This leads us to a new third horizon principle, the competence cohesion principle. The principle is simple. Competence reduces helpless fear. Shared competence creates earned trust, and earned trust strengthens human cohesion. Or in its shortest form, preparation builds competence, competence builds trust, trust builds cohesion. But this does not mean that competence makes us invulnerable. It does not mean that every danger can be controlled. And it does not mean that preparation guarantees the outcomes we desire. Human beings must remain humble. There will always be circumstances we cannot predict, events we cannot prevent, and consequences we cannot completely control. But uncertainty is not the same as helplessness. Even when control is limited, choice remains. We can choose whether to prepare. We can choose whether to learn. We can choose whether to practice. We can choose whether to communicate. We can choose whether to become dependable to the people around us. And we can choose whether fear drives us apart or reminds us that we need one another. Now, at the individual level, choose one fear that matters. Not every imagined danger, not every passing anxiety. One real concern connected to the life you want to live. Then ask, what do I not understand? What ability am I missing? What can I learn? What can I practice? And what would readiness look like? At the family level, talk about responsibilities before the emergency. Who calls for help? Where do we meet? What information does everyone need? What should children understand? And what skills could help us protect one another? At the community level, cohesion grows when people contribute competence instead of merely expecting rescue. A prepared neighbor can become reassurance. A trained volunteer can become assistance. A calm voice can become direction. And a person who understands the danger can help prevent fear from becoming panic. At the long view, humanity will continue to face uncertainty. New technologies, changing environments, medical threats, natural disasters, social pressure, and journeys far beyond the world we presently know. The third horizon will not be reached by people who never feel fear. It will be reached by human beings who learn from fear, prepare for danger, develop competence, and build enough trust to face the unknown together. Prepared, not fearless. That is the lesson. Fear may tell us that we are not ready. Wisdom asks us to listen. Responsibility asks us to prepare. Practice helps us become capable. And cohesion reminds us that no meaningful future is built alone. Chris Hadfield said, "The greatest antidote for fear is competence." To that wisdom, the third horizon adds, competence reduces fear. Shared competence creates trust. And trust holds human beings together when everything around them is under pressure. And that brings us back to the next human fault line, because fear can encourage human beings to prepare, but it can also narrow our sense of time. It can make immediate relief feel more important than lasting responsibility. Next time, we examine short-term dominance, the struggle between immediate desire and long-term wisdom, when the present begins to consume the future. Before we close, I want to leave you with one question. What is one fear in your life that became smaller after you developed the competence to face it? Please share your experience in the comments. Your answer may help someone else realize that they are not helpless. And that readiness can be learned. It can be part of the shared human experience. So yes, please, let us know what's one fear in your life that became smaller after you developed the competence to face it. This podcast is not about pointing fingers or assigning blame. This podcast is about understanding what holds us together when everything around us is under pressure. This podcast is about exploring the future humanity is capable of creating. If you are someone who senses the world shifting, if you feel the tension between what is and what could be, if you believe humanity is meant for something more, then welcome. This is the Third Horizon. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. More conversations are coming, deeper, wider, and firmly focused on the future. If you enjoyed today's podcast, hit the like button, let us know in the comments, and subscribe to our Spotify, YouTube, and Facebook channel, or whatever platform you are listening from. And do not forget to share this podcast with your friends and family. Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon and beyond.
This episode of The Third Horizon is brought to you by Coin Toss Coffee, a brand built on passion, family, and the bold leap into possibility. Every blend is handcrafted from Kevin's own recipes, including their best-selling Cowboy Roast, bold, smooth, and unforgettable. And right now, listeners of The Third Horizon can enjoy 10% off their order at cointosscoffee.com using promo code Horizon10. That is cointosscoffee.com. Coin Toss Coffee. Take a chance on a better cup. This episode of The Third Horizon is also brought to you by FCA, Fine Consulting Agency. If you need high-level policy analysis, structured research, or strategic writing tailored for government, space governance, or nonprofit sectors, FCA delivers clarity, organization, and deep insight. Learn more at fcaonline.info. That is fcaonline.info.